Okay, George, how are we doing with people coming in?
We got about 140,
Okay,
but I just wanted to start recording so I wouldn't forget.
sure.
We can edit this out.
Canvas, I'll talk about a little bit later in the broadcast. Some people are asking some questions about it. Okay. So I'm just going to make myself a note. We can talk about Canvas because I think that's going to be a big issue. And let's see where we're at. We're about 145. I think the chat room starting to, or the waiting room starting to slow down. So we will get started. It's 7:35 and this meeting is being recorded, just like always. I just wanted to remind people, thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome to, I don't even know what number Tuttle Talk we're on, but I'm so excited that so many people are tuning into these to see what's going on. So I love the engagement of our members right now and just how I'd say excited I am that you have to get this involved. I am excited, but unfortunately it's not for something that I wish we had to be talking about. But anyway, so again, thank you for joining in. I can't believe it's only been a week since we heard the governor's guidelines, or lack of guidelines, we should say, last week. I feel like it's been a month. But this Tuttle Talk tonight is very important. As you know, their plan that they let out last week promoted flexibility over safety. Nimble is a word that the commissioner loves to use, but it really leads to basically their plan being summed up on 5 words: is you're on your own. The governor and the commissioner have failed to lead on this issue, and in the absence of this leadership, tomorrow we're releasing to the public our principles for reopening. George is going to put that in the chat box for you. This is a 4-page document that we've been writing and vetting over the past week, and this is basically, it's our statement. It's our principle statement on values that we as educators believe in, and we're going to advocate, as we always have, for the health and safety of our members and for the students. We're going to advocate for nothing less than what's in this document. And if the districts want students to reopen, to be in the open buildings again, then these steps will represent the minimum standards we believe have to be met before anything can be open. So let me just give you a little background on today. So yesterday I was on NHPR. I think some of you might have heard. Unfortunately, because it was a Zoom meeting, we didn't get to use those social cues where I can raise my hand and say that I really, really want to talk on something, which was a little hard because there were a lot of points I wanted to get in but couldn't. But this morning, I was a panelist on a joint session of the House and Senate Education Committees. And what it was for was to hear different viewpoints on the guidelines that were released and what's been happening since then. It was a big slam on the commissioner and the governor for not really taking leadership and not really doing what they should have been doing this whole time. And so we felt this was a really good time to come up with these. So basically, NEA New Hampshire is calling for a phased-in reopening, in a sense. These steps that are in this document that are going to be released to the press tomorrow, and we'll get them out to, we'll have it posted tonight, but it's also, the link's going to be in here. These come all together. And so basically, if you haven't done step 1, we're not recommending you move on to step 2. The UNISERV directors were a huge help in writing this and helping, come up with everything that should be in here. And they're going to be helping you through this process. So the step number 1 is full staffing and full funding prior to reopening. So basically, we all know that we need more money to reopen the schools. And it's not that we're asking for more money for us as educators, we're asking for more money to make sure the HVAC systems are in place, to make sure that we have the PPE, which interestingly enough, even though last week at the press conference, the governor said that there wasn't, that I think he said educators weren't, or schools weren't going to be able to tap into the state's supply of PPE. Today, all of a sudden, we had a whole plane load arrive that all of a sudden was for the schools, because they're starting a whole social media campaign on, you should be wearing a mask. No, mask should be mandated, and we should just leave it at that. So the full staffing and full funding, we need more nurses, we need more counselors, we need more ESP. We need to make sure that all of our students and staff are supplied with the proper PPE. We need to know that the state is going to reimburse those districts for all of those things that we need. It could be physical materials. One of the comments today that was an excellent comment was made that, you know, best practices sometimes include grouping children in schools. And if we're having them sit or distance 6 feet apart, how are we going to do that, especially when a lot of schools have tables? So they're going to have to pony up the money to get desks. And so this is all part of it, which does go against our natural instinct as educators when, you know, they're recommending we have desks all face forward in rows and in lines. That goes against our best instinct, our natural instinct as educators. So we're still following the same guidelines for masks. Grade 2 and above is what the pediatricians are recommending. We are advocating, sorry, not recommending, that all necessary custodial staff will be hired, that it has to, they have to adhere to the Environmental Protection Agency cleaning standards in every school, that if you're not tasked with custodial duties, you should not be doing that, okay? We have to actually keep it where it is. We want every school to have at least one nurse with all the necessary PPE. Another thing that was brought up today was that even though schools might have a nurse, it might only be one, and there might not even be enough room for those nurses to have separate quarters or separate spaces designed for people who are, you know, COVID possibly sick. Also, that nurses' medical judgment is respected and they're granted authority on all of those medical decisions. Prior to the first day of school, every school needs to have a thorough air quality evaluation, and the report needs to be shared with all employees. Schools with HVAC systems that don't meet the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning are considered unsafe and should not be occupied until it is fixed. So that's a really, really big one in step number 1. Moving on to step number 2 is really that kind of phase reopening. The first phase is used by teachers, it's used by ESP, substitute, anybody else that's a school personnel that's going to, you need to have that uninterrupted time together to prepare for the return of students. And looking at whatever your district is planning to be able to go through what those plans are. We're supporting at least 3 days expanded professional development for those purposes. And that is not saying it's the 3 days that the governor wants you to have. We're saying those can be negotiated into your contract or paid per diem. That's something to work out with your UNISERV director, but at least 3 full days of in-staff, everybody training together for this. It could be looking at setting up in-person or virtual classrooms. It could be training on health and safety protocols, making time for professional development and curriculum development. It could be preparing for phases 2 and 3, looking at social emotional learning, academic learning, possible hybrid remote education. Whatever it is that your district's planning on, that is that guaranteed time to be looking at that. Phase 2 of reopening is where the educators will meet the students and families, either in person or remotely, as the public health context allows. So this time is to also be used in meeting with the families to prepare them for the new health and safety protocols you're coming up with. That could include physical distancing. That could include mask wearing. We're recommending 2 to 4 days for this, but again, it's going to depend on your district. And that time can also be used for social and emotional wellness checks when you're meeting with them, basic needs assessments, maybe an evaluation of technology needs, recommending reconnecting with students, family, and school, and and school communities. Those are really good things that it can be used for. And again, that's just 2 to 4 days. We're not taking 3 months to do this or anything like that. but that's going to 2 or 3 days. Phase 3 is the resumption of the instruction and learning, whether that's going to be in person, remote, hybrid, but it's focusing on the first 6 weeks of learning. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to begin on the first day of school. A couple districts I've heard from is that they're actually pushing back the start of school for students and giving the educators more time in the beginning. I think Manchester said September 9th for the students and earlier for educators. I've heard that in other districts as well. So this again is going to be separate or different. But during this time, the educators and the students are going to build their relationships with each other, establishing learning communities, school climate, and culture. This is where those expectations are going to be set. The rules are going to be set. The new structures and routines would be learned. Groundwork will be laid for social emotional learning and academic learning throughout the year. Curriculum and instruction decisions are going to be informed by what students need and by what engages them. So that's going to be phase 3. Phase 4 is based on the assessment of public health data and educational progress under the initial reopening plan. So where are we? This is going to be led by the Joint Loss Management Committee. It's going to seek input from students, parents, and the community, because we do have to have the community involved in this. It takes place 6 to 8 weeks after the start of school. And then based on that, your local association with your district will determine the next step. So do we need to modify the plan? Do we need to keep with what we're doing, or can we go to something else? So those are kind of the phased in guidelines. Step 3 is assuring student, staff, health, and safety. That PPE, again, we're calling on the state to make sure that all relevant science-based guidelines and the New Hampshire Department of Labor requirements ensure the greatest possible safety, both for students, their families, and educators and their families. That's going to include the 6 feet of the 6 feet of distancing, use of face masks or face coverings. It could include masks, it could include shields, different positions might have different things, but those must be available to the students. It shouldn't be put back onto the families to have to provide them. Again, as the conditioning of reopening, all of the districts must evaluate and, if necessary, upgrade their HVAC systems. And this is a must. This is not a should, like it is with the governor's guidelines. This is a must. This is air quality, and this is important. Baseline protocols for daily maintenance and cleaning that meet the EPA. Maintenance is expected to be performed multiple times a day. And then all the districts must have a protocol for dealing with positive COVID-19 cases, including establishing isolation rooms, testing, reporting, contact tracing, and paid leave for employees who are advised to quarantine. So we're still working. Emergency order number 36 from the governor says that first responders can get workers' comp. We were not included as educators in that, yet when the topic was violence in schools, all of a sudden the educators were tasked with having to learn how to tie a tourniquet around a kindergartner, for God's sake. So we had Stop the Bleed Across America. We were first responders when that was there, but all of a sudden in the middle of the pandemic, we're not first responders. So we're trying to get that fixed as well, so that you are all first responders. And if you get COVID-19, you don't have to prove that it's been on the job, because you were first line and you're there in the front working with everyone. Step 4 is modifications and waivers on state regulations related to the time and learning regulatory requirements. We are one of the only, if not the only one, state that doesn't have laws around pandemic planning, And because of that, we have to still ask the State Board of Education to be, still waive those days. And that's something that we should be able to have that. We're in the middle of a pandemic, for goodness sake. Sorry, I'm just writing a note. Okay, extending timelines for advancing or renewing current licenses based on a barrier to your ability to engage in PD, to take or pass tests required by the New Hampshire DOE for licensure. We're saying, as I just talked about, the executive order number 36, that the governor is going to grant educators the same benefit that he granted first responders with regard to workers' comp. Step 5, staff assignments and workload, including alternate teaching and learning arrangements for educators and or students. There should be recognition there's a need for some educators to provide remote instruction and other educators to provide in person. But as a rule, there should be no there should be no educator that is both in-person and remote teaching. That can't happen. You're one or the other. Now that can change throughout the year potentially, but in no way should you be doing both at any time. Educators prioritized for remote instruction should include those that have the at-risk categories, who have household members at-risk categories, as well as those with pressing childcare responsibilities. Districts should consider mitigating these childcare issues by coordinating teaching and learning schedules with employees' childcare limitations. We also need to be offering professional development for educators if no other work arrangements are available. Students who are in at-risk categories, who have household members in those categories, should be provided alternative learning arrangements, including remote learning, for example. So when I say you shouldn't be doing it both at once, remote and instruction, what we're saying is that you should not be doing in-person instruction during the day and then going home and doing remote instruction. The hybrid model should have some educators that are doing one thing and some educators that are doing the other. And the last one, the last step, and I know this is a lot to take in without reading it, and I appreciate everyone being so patient. The last one is that all students and staff, including our ESP, must have access to the appropriate technology. So that has to be provided by the state or the district in order to fulfill their roles and responsibilities. I did hear from a few superintendents at the joint session today that there was a lot of districts that were providing those, but we're still working on that. It's still not across the board. They have to have, or you have to have, I'm sorry, access to reliable and adequate internet service. If you don't have it, then the district needs to provide it or assist in providing it for you. There's got to be support to students, families, and staff to set up this technology. What we cannot do is what happened in the spring. Again, we've done an amazing job with this, but we can't be expected to turn on a dime and just expect the parents to all understand how to work the technology or the platforms that the districts are using. Districts should make parents aware that if you're doing learning or instruction while at home, it does carry that incidental risk of other household members viewing or overhearing school activities. And that's just kind of part of what it is. Now, it's going to be unacceptable, and it is unacceptable, and we've said this many, many times, to ask educators to use their own personal devices at home. And that just cannot happen. So again, I know that's a lot, and there's a couple things I wanted to mention before I start going back to some of the questions. I know that Rachel, I think, and Michelle have been helping to kind of field some of those questions as we were going through. So now I see everybody's faces and I can have a little bit more of a normal Zoom meeting with you. So Canvas was brought up. The commissioner and governor used part of the $9 million from CARES Act money that they had left over to bid on this platform. I'm hearing, and I don't know much about it, maybe Rachel Hawkinson can help us a little bit, because it's a platform used mostly in higher ed from what I'm hearing, and it would be one platform used across the state where you could grade and do everything else with that. My concern with it is that what can the DOE see? What can they pull from the entire state using it? Who does the commissioner know that this was the only platform that he was going to instead of other platforms? So needless to say, I'm a little bit nervous when this came out. But Rachel Hawkinson, I know you're on the call. If you could let us know a little bit about this, because I know you have had some talks about it with people.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. I'm happy to be here. I had my video off because I was having a snack while you guys were talking.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
my big face eating food in front of me.
I'm sorry.
But I am paying attention to the chat as well. So Canvas is used in the USNH system, and it's used at Keene State. So that's the source of my familiarity with it. And, you know, the folks at Keene State, report their pros and cons. There are lots of different features that can be included in the Canvas system. And higher ed students are used to using it. So at least they can go there and access their syllabus. And then there are other features that can be used by faculty there. How it would be applied to a K-12, system, I'm not exactly sure, however, because there are features of it that take a lot of self-direction from students, and higher ed students are typically better able developmentally and academically to be able to use those sort of self-directed features. So it was a surprise to me that the commissioner decided to purchase this for the entire state K-12 to use. I'm not sure why he reached the conclusion that that would be a good idea versus other platforms. But definitely to the extent that it impacts your working conditions, your delivery of instruction, or the expectations that your students or families might be able to access your resources and your professional time outside of the boundaries that your union has agreed to, then bring that to the attention of your UD and your union president, and make sure that there are real strong limits and guidelines that the union has agreed to as to when and how that platform can be used, because it's not going to be the same application in a K-12 setting as it will be in a higher ed setting, that's for sure.
Megan and Rachel, I'm familiar with Canvas, and I do know, and I've used it in the higher ed, but I'm aware of how it's used in the schools. I do know that administrators can like drop in on any course at any time, look at any and all communication between teachers and students. And basically one of their selling points is principals don't have to leave their office to be in every class all the time. And they don't have to leave their office to be fully engaged with students, because they can just, oh, look, you just did this assignment. You should have taken more time. So there's a lot of kind of big brother is watching kind of feel to it. And that's actually one of the things that they stressed as a selling point.
Yeah, the difference in a higher ed setting is that they have more of a focus on academic freedom and intellectual property, and so there are those sort of different concerns in a higher ed setting. And they, at least at Keene State, professors and adjuncts are able to limit access by others into their Canvas platforms. And they, there's a whole protocol that they have to go through in order to grant access to others to their materials. And so you'd want to be careful about that. And also make sure if your union already has established agreements regarding evaluations and observations of performance, that those are taken into account when you're negotiating parameters around access to Canvas.
So it sounds like this is something that I need to be questioning the commissioner on and asking, because in his guidelines, it does say that they're talking about this, but it didn't say specifically that it's Canvas, even though we know it was. So what the commissioner is saying is that it's going to be used. He isn't saying it's going to be mandated yet, but I do want to try and get him on record for that. So we will be getting be getting in touch with them. It does say it's going to be used across the state. The state is paying for it, is my understanding, out of the CARES money. So the commissioner is making it sound good by saying that it's free to all the districts. Now, the problem with this, I mean, there's multiple problems, but one of the big problems I see is that the guidelines also talk about all this time for training and implementing it. And I don't know when they think that's going to happen, because, they just threw out 3 days and they didn't really say when that was going to be or what that was going to be used for. And honestly, I don't think that's enough. I mean, Google took, for me alone, Google took a little bit to learn. And I wasn't going to be I wasn't going to feel comfortable using it right away. It took me a year of Google Classroom before I really felt comfortable to use it for the Blizzard bags that we had in Pembroke. I'm seeing some of the chats going through, and I can't keep up with everything, so this is kind of broad. But, I'm part of what I'm hearing is there's not going to be enough time to train on this. And if we have to train the educators who then have to train, parents or help parents understand how this is being used and train the students exactly, that's not going to all be done before school starts. So we're going to be Mommy's trying to do something. So we're going to be getting definitely more clarity on what's going up with Canvas. That's going to be something that we will be checking in with the governor and the commissioner to find out where they stand on that. And as soon as we find out anything, I will let you know on that. And I'll also look at some of the more specific questions about it here. One of the other things that got brought up was about the HVAC systems, and it said that you need an industrial hygienist to really come in and do that, or to look at them or clean them. I actually know someone who can get that in for me next week. So next week's Tuttle Tot might include an industrial hygienist, if that's something people would be interested in hearing from, somebody they'd be interested in hearing from, so you can actually understand what's going on with the HVAC systems, if you don't, because this is something I'm still learning. I know that this is something important, and I know that air ventilation is important, but a lot of this are things that I'm learning from now. So someone I went to college with has a friend who's an industrial hygienist, so I will talk to them about getting them on next week, because I think these are things above what we normally think about, or potentially above what we normally think about, but I will get that in. Michelle and Rachel, I know you guys have been a huge help and kind of monitoring what's going on in the chat. And so I'm thinking the Canvas, if it's going to be mandated, we're looking at that, things like that. So is there anything else, Rachel and Michelle, that you're seeing come up before I kind of see what else is going on?
Hi, everybody. I just see some stuff just recently coming up, but I think you've covered the majority of the questions. I think there's been some comments about what particular districts are doing, which is, you know, good information to share. But I think we've covered the questions.
Oh, good. Okay. I did see the last one. I just want more clarification on the hybrid model. Debbie, I so wish I could give you clarification. Sadly, everybody has different opinions on this, and it's a little crazy. Some are doing different days in the classroom, like an A-B day, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe Tuesday, Thursday. Some are doing, if you have a choice, you can do some at home, some in school. Some districts are pushing VLACs for those that don't want to be out there. We just, George just put up the reopening principle. I have not had time to do a comparison of the school district's plans that are out so far versus how they stand up to ours. That's something I can look at over the next few days. But this document can definitely be shared. This document can definitely be shared. We have a bunch of other states, and I think Tammy Davis is working on getting that information compiled together. But the Superintendents Association has all of the districts that have submitted plans so far. So if you go to I think it's the NHSA. George, could you look that up, or Rachel or Michelle? I know we had it today in a link email. Thank you, Rachel. We'll put that out there, and so that actually will give you the reopening resources that we have so far. I don't know how many districts specifically. I have not counted them, but I know that they are coming in. I've been seeing snippets of them. Yes, Rachel. Thank you.
Comment that just because a school district's plan is published or has been distributed to the community does not mean that it's final, because it's still subject to bargaining with the association. So to the extent that any plans that have been put out by districts at this point contradict union collective bargaining agreements or implicate union working conditions, or, you know, would trigger impact bargaining, those plans might change. So just because you see a plan that's published, know that it might not be final. It might change subject to the objections or the negotiations by the union.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. And that's, you know, a great point, because one of the first things we talk about in our reopening statement is that everything has to go through negotiations too. So if you're looking at things, that's where it is. But we're not going to advocate for anything less than what we've put out. You know, for a while, we always seem to, it's interesting. A lot of the comments and everything I've been hearing a lot about have been, what do parents want and what do children want? And of course, everybody wants to go back to school, and nobody wants them back in, I think, more than us. I mean, we would love it if we could go back to pre-pandemic times and have everybody be able to go to school. But unfortunately, that's not the time we're in. So the question isn't if we're going to go back, it's how are we going to go back safely? So, something to just, I think people are starting to finally realize. I know on the joint session today, at the end of the 3.5-hour meeting, which I don't know if it was better in person or on Zoom. It's interesting to sit with legislators on Zoom. But at the end of the meeting, there were a few of the legislators that are friends of ours that said, I really had no idea it was this bad. So a lot of what's out there hasn't really been heard. We've been talking a lot about it because it's our life. It's our things that we are talking about daily, right? Thinking about before you go to bed. I've heard from members that they're preparing or re-preparing their wills before they go back into the classroom. And honestly, that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life, to be quite honest. I am appalled that people feel the need to have to redo their will to actually have to go back to work. I mean, that's sad. I brought it up today at the 3.5-hour meeting, and I think people were, as shocked about that as they were when we told them that there was violence happening in the school against educators. Nobody thought that could happen. But everybody was really, really shocked that this is what's going on. So by getting this document out tomorrow, by having us talk to other people, we're not doing anything that's horrible. We're advocating safety. And that's a great question, Scott, right? School boards and state committees are meeting on Zoom for safety. Why do you think it's, unsafe to open schools? The nurses today let loose on the commissioner. The nurses were probably the most vocal and the angriest, and I loved it. It was amazing to hear them. They just told the truth about what's going on. Last year was basically not doing anything. The bus driver union. I mean, people were not holding back today. The superintendents that were on really broke down the cost, because all we've been hearing about is, oh, we have all this CARES money. We have all this CARES money to use. Well, guess what? We don't. When the superintendents broke it down for their district, it was horrible. There's no money really that came from CARES, and partly because they were squandering away half of it, or saving half of it until we heard from Betsy DeVos if we should be giving it to private schools or not. I mean, it was horrible to hear, but this was, this is what people needed to hear. And I think that meeting, I know it was being live on Zoom, so maybe Brian can figure out if we can get that and publish it, because I mean, it's a 3.5-hour meeting, but honestly, the first half hour, 45 minutes were Edelblut trying to defend himself without answering any questions. So that was actually really interesting. The nurses are towards the end, and honestly, they were so mad that they have not been included in this process at all. They were just angry, and it was fabulous. It was just fabulous to hear them. So I do want to thank everybody that was there. Oh, good. David Saunders got it up on there. So it was a really, really good thing. It is 3.5 hours, like I said, but it was good. There were some questions that the commissioner didn't answer, but it was good. The bus drivers were on there, and they did talk a lot about how, for some people, this is a second job. This isn't something that they can do all day. And so they're retiring, or they just might think it's not worth it anymore to drive the buses. And that's a huge loss to us, because I mean, they are definitely part of, the everyday school. So one of the other things I think is coming up, so we have coalitions that we're part of, and we're working pretty closely on school funding with the School Funding Commission, and we had Representative Luno on a couple weeks back, but we also have some other groups we're working with, and we are pushing very hard for the school funding aspect at the national level, especially because that's where we're going to get the second round of stimulus money, if you want to call it stimulus money. Basically, the first, so we got the CARES Act money. The second act is the HEROES money. That was good when it was in the House. Now it's over in the Senate, and it's really not as good as it should be. Brian, do you want to, I know I just put you on the spot, but do you want to touch upon the HEROES Act a little bit and what we're trying to what we're trying to get from them?
Sure. So in the CARES Act, as Megan said, there was money around $36 million for New Hampshire that was part of a larger pot of money called the Education Stabilization Fund. And a number of the superintendents, as Megan said earlier today, really did a good job of sort of itemizing how they get to using that money up, in some cases before the new school year even starts. And so the HEROES Act is another even larger injection of money into that Education Stabilization Fund that is really needed. And right now, there was a substantial amount passed by the House. I think it was over $145 billion. The Senate has been talking about a lot less. And so, you know, if Mitch McConnell and the president are saying schools need to go back, well, they need to put their money where their mouth is, and they need to fund them to go back safely. And so there's going to be more opportunities for advocacy on that. Thankfully, we have a very good federal delegation. But there are other voices like the governor and the commissioner that need to step up and say, we need to pass something like this. And we also need to not be diverting money to private and religious schools. Because as the superintendent in Manchester said this morning, you know, he's using this portion of his CARES Act money, and then he has to hold back $1 million to give away to private schools. So there are other elected officials and leaders that can step up and advocate for the HEROES Act, and we need to push them to do that.
Thank you, Brian. One of the things that's coming up too is about subs. There was discussion today on the joint session, is that they were looking to get nurses, to get a supply of substitute nurses. Critical, obviously we need that, but we also need subs in the regular classroom. I think it was Bill Lupini over from the Seacoast as the superintendent who said they actually raised the payment that they were giving to substitute teachers. I'm reading, we can't get nurses when it isn't a pandemic. I know. They were raising how much the subs get paid so that they might be able to attract more people. But honestly, think about it. If you're out of the classroom because you're potentially contracted COVID from either a coworker or a student, who's going to want to pay, even, you know, come in to be a sub, even if the pay is raised? I mean, most school districts are between 65 and 75 a day. Even if it's raised, who's going to want to do that? So anyway, that's another thing that's just ridiculous. Brian?
Well, I was just going to say, the governor, if you saw the press conference today at 3 o'clock from the governor, he was asked about that, I think by Adam Sexton, and in response to the concern that a lot of teachers may consider retiring rather than going back to the classroom if these are the guidelines that they're going to be under. And the governor was pretty flip about it. He just said, yep, there's going to need to be a lot of subs hired. And that was his response. And he was also asked if they'd considered raising, helping to raise pay like they have done with some of the other professions in order to maintain staff. And he said, no.
It really just shows how out of touch they truly are. Michelle.
So I just wanted to address a couple people are kind of questioning and commenting about, how can my school do this if CDC guidelines don't fit, and how are they getting away with this? So you guys have had, this union's been around for a long time. The labor law here in New Hampshire has been around since 1976, I believe. And so some of these contracts are very seasoned, and some of you are very seasoned and have been around for a long time and had to fight for a lot of what you have in those contracts. This isn't anything different. So you guys need to, survey your membership, see where their comfort level is at. Once you have that backing of your members and you know where they stand, and if they demand masks, then you bring that to your planning committees, to your school board, to the admin who's in charge of working on this, and make it known that that these certain things are important to your members, whether it's wearing masks, making sure they're 6 feet apart, delaying entry for a while to figure out how this is all going to shake out, expressing your concern about hybrid models or supporting one model or the other. You know, it would be nice if it was obvious to everybody else that there are certain things that you need and demand and need for your students, need for your safety. It's not always how it works. So you need to, you know, fight the good fight and keep doing what you've continued to do and what the people, you know, in the past have fought for you. So keep it up. And if you do need any assistance with survey questions to help get an understanding where your members at, talk to the survey director. We have samples. Some of the ones that we've gotten back have been really enlightening. And frankly, the administrators have been very receptive to receiving that. And now you know, so you may have administrators who they want to require masks, but they don't have the backing. By going to them with the backing of your union and your members and your fellow educators, it's going to help them push to do the right thing.
So thank you, Michelle. There's something in there, if you can just answer it, about filming in the classrooms. I know we've discussed this before, but if you could just answer that real quick, I would definitely appreciate it. Rachel?
And Megan, we can also talk about, there have been a couple questions about certification and being directed to teach outside of your certification. So if it's okay, I can answer that question. So New Hampshire Department of Education regulations do allow for school principals to decide that teachers are capable of teaching outside their certification and therefore assign them outside of their certification, but only for if it's less than 50% of their weekly teaching time. So depending on how, you know, if you're a high school teacher and how your schedule is broken up, or if you're an elementary school teacher, how your assignment is broken up, it has to be less than 50% of your weekly teaching time, and your principal has to certify that you are have the expertise to teach outside of your certification. So it sort of puts the responsibility on your principal to be accountable for your performance in that area if you're not certified in that area. But some people are surprised to learn that they can be assigned at least part of their time outside of their area certification. That's the DOE regulation. Do check your collective bargaining agreement though, because your CBA may have more specific language that governs assignments outside of certification. We do have some CBAs that say that teachers may not be assigned. They're not permitted to be assigned outside their certification. So that's the reg, but check your collective bargaining agreement to see if there's a more specific limitation on that.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you, Michelle, too. So some of the things, you know, we can start doing things now. I know there's someone, you know, can we start addressing some actions we can take? We can do things now. George, can you put up the slide? So these are some simple things, okay? And then we'll get into some other ones. The first one, contact the governor's office. We talked about this last week. We are 17,000 strong. He cannot ignore 17,000 strong people emailing and calling them. I did get an email from a member last week who said that they emailed and they got this reply back basically saying, I'm sorry, you know, I'm flooded with emails right now. I can't respond. And I just thought that was the best thing ever. Anyway, but call the governor's office, contact him, let him know your personal story. This is not something that we're going to put out a you know, cut and paste letter. This has to come from you. This has to come from you, your personal story, what's going on, and let them know if you're not comfortable with it. I would send emails from your personal emails. Don't get into using your school emails at all. So we always recommend using your home emails. That's definitely the better one. You can download the editor guide in the chat box, and you can submit these letters to the editors. George just put it up. It says LTE Roundup PDF. Submit them to your local papers. Submit them so people can hear what's going on, because what I keep hearing just from outside And what I'm seeing on a lot of social media is the parents are wanting to really know how the teachers are feeling. I mean, they truly are. We're hearing all about how parents want kids to go back, but they're not addressing the safety concerns. We know kids want to be back to be with their friends, but again, how are we going to make this safe for that return? And so write your letters, get them out to your local papers, let them know what's really going on. Definitely work with your local and your UDs to assure these principles, this document, the principles for reopening, is being followed. 17,000 strong, we can't ignore that. We are a force to be reckoned with in New Hampshire if we use this time to our benefit. We need to show everybody exactly what's going on, right? Encourage people that are not members to join. There's strength in numbers. We have about 26,000 potential members in New Hampshire, and we're 17,000 strong. Can you imagine what we can do? I know that I just got an email today about adding 14 new members. This is all within like the past couple days. 14 new people are seeing what we're doing and they want to be part of this. So those are some simple actions that we can take. Now, a couple other things. I have heard about rolling rallies, and these are kind of new, these rolling rallies. I heard about them in Arizona. So people are asking me, should we, do a rally at the State House? Should we have a statewide march at the State House? Problem with that is it goes against what we're advocating for, which is not getting all those people together in one spot, right? We're trying to avoid that, and that kind of goes against our purpose, and it just doesn't look right. But rolling rallies might be something in your town that you might want to consider. Those are things where you're in your car. It's just like the birthday parties. Has anyone here ever done a birthday party by car where everybody drives by? Those seem to be the new latest greatest thing. My mom thought one was for her, but it was actually my friend's son, but she loved it. So she, oh, thank you. It was great. So we're going to give her one on her birthday in October. But anyway, but rolling rallies, have signs. We support our educators, safe reopening, mandate masks, whatever. Have it going by your school board. Have it, maybe going by, we haven't talked yet about a state one at the Capitol, but we are going to talk about that. And so that might be something else, but those are some other things. The other one, and I mean, I hate to keep bringing this up, but when politicians get out of the classroom, I'll get out of politics. Remember, in November, we talked about this last year a lot. Your voice matters. It does. 17,000 strong. We have a chance in November to change the state and the national landscape for education. You speaking to one person could be that one vote. It truly, truly does. Brian's been working with some other groups that are working with kids, or I should say high schoolers, young adults, getting them into vote. But these are the things, we have to get the word out there. We have to let people know that we're not going to be silent on this. This is our life. This is our livelihood. These are our babies that we're talking about every single day. This is your family. You need to remember in November what's been going on. If we can change the keep the executive council, we can get a new commissioner of education in New Hampshire, someone who actually knows something about education, someone who actually believes in public education, right? If we can get a new governor, someone in the corner office, we have a chance to completely change everything about education in New Hampshire. We need to be the people they're going to. By us showing them through maybe the rolling rallies or enough letters to the editor, flooding them with phone calls and emails and everything else, we're going to be the ones that they're coming to, which is the way it should be. We're the professionals in this. They're not. We're the professionals in the profession. It's easy for them to step outside and say, oh, you should do this and you should do that and you should do that because it looks good on paper. Yeah? How about the reality of it? What's it truly going to look like when you get into that classroom finally and realize that you have your desks 6 feet apart, all in a row? That goes against everything we were ever taught as educators. So these are some simple actions we can take now. You can pass these along, get them to friends, get them to parents, get them to whoever. You can write the letter to the editors. You can t-shirt campaign for a rolling rally. We can look into that. Yes, there's so many things that we can start to look at. I do want to avoid the statewide march right now, right? Just because it goes against it. But this is, I'm looking at this as our Red for Ed in New Hampshire moment. For years, I kept saying we didn't have one, common thread really in New Hampshire because of how we're set up that could get us to do a march like West Virginia or Arizona. But right now, I think we do. It's the safety back in schools. This is our chance. So we need to utilize the time we have and pick up on this. I am open for any ideas people might have. Email me, text me, call me, whatever. I'm open for these ideas that people might have that we can do, you know, different things in New Hampshire. I was on the phone a couple days ago with the presidents from West Virginia and Arizona who led them. It is illegal to strike in West Virginia. Just want to put that out there, but they still had a pretty successful campaign. So I was on the phone with them, and they're up for doing a Tuttle Talk with us. So maybe after the industrial hygienist, we can have them on, depending on what's going on in the state. But you know, it was really, we're on the right track. Talking to them, we are on the right track for what we're doing, which is always a good thing to hear from other people who have been through it. So I really believe this is our time. This is our moment. We need to step up, and we need to show everybody that what we're going to do is we're going to take back education in New Hampshire, and we're going to do it the right way. Michelle?
I just wanted to reemphasize that if you do email or contact a politician, elected official, any person that's not within your school community, you must do it on your personal email. Do not use your work email. That is considered an official document. They could claim that you are acting as an official from the school. So it's very, very important that you do not do any of this type of work from your work email. Use your personal email only.
I think you just made Brian very happy, Michelle.
Okay, good.
And if you don't know who your elected officials are, we'll help you. Ask your UNISERV director, right? Or email us. We can help you find out who they are. But definitely go and check out the what am I trying to say? Sorry. Oh, it's been a long day. Check out the superintendent's site to see what, you know, plans are up there right now. Manchester does have red shirts that have the educator on the side, so you can always get a hold of Maxine Mosley or Sue Hannon from Manchester. And I was just looking at something today from Iowa about a week-long action. Brian and George are not going to be happy with me right now because I just texted it to them right before this and said we need to do something like this in New Hampshire. So we might get something like that started. They're having a week of action. Basically what they're doing, just to let you know, because I just think it's it's really neat. So 7/22 is Wake Up the State Wednesday, calling on state leaders to prioritize health and safety. Talk to your school board Thursday. Ask your school board to adopt the guidelines that Iowa has on reopening schools. Federal funding Friday. Contact Iowa state senators asking to get them to pass education stabilization funds and COVID-19 relief legislation. 7/24, Drive for Our Lives, the car procession of educators and allies in Des Moines. National Day of Action for Voter Registration, help a friend register to vote. Mask Up Monday, call on state leaders for statewide mask mandate. So yeah, I just saw that tonight, about 10 minutes before we got on the Tuttle Talk, and I was like, wow, this is great. We need to do something like this. So Scott, hopefully that's gonna be something we can count on you to get involved with. You're shaking your head yes, so I'm very excited. I love the Mask Up Monday. That could be really kind of cool. So anyway, okay, so it's been about an hour. These Tuttle Talks grew way more than I ever thought they would, and I'm so thankful that you are all willing to give up some Tuesday nights and get involved. This is huge. I know the UNISERV directors were sending all the chat boxes to them. A huge thank you tonight to Michelle and Rachel for kind of helping to monitor it, because there's no way I could have gone back and forth to do it. And they're amazing in answering the questions and getting all their information out. So I know they're talking with the other UNISERV directors and getting all these out. So the questions that some people have from one district are getting into the other districts. This is not being contained here. These are coming out. The 3 feet apart, I think, is coming from Melissa. I could be wrong, but I think it's coming from the pediatrics. The American Association of Pediatrics are saying 3 feet is okay, but 6 feet is better. So my inclination to think that the governor took that to say, oh, 3 feet's good. It's really 6 feet that's being recommended by the CDC guidelines that we're suggesting that everybody follows. And that's a better, especially if they're not mandating masks, which we still think they should be. That's something. So Yeah, they're saying if possible. All of this is possible. Okay. I hate to put it this way, but my God, you guys are all educators. You make everything possible every single day that you're with the children. You make something possible. You can take a toilet paper tube and make it into this amazing creation, right? With high schoolers, we can make this work. And this is what I'm saying. This is our time. This is our moment. We are the professionals in this, not the people sitting in a corner office in Concord. It's you guys. It's you are the ones that are in the classroom doing the work every day in the schools, making the meals, driving the buses, making sure things are clean, helping, you know, all the students in there and teaching. It's you that are doing this every day. So this is our time to make sure that we're going to get it right. We're 17,000 strong, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be the ones leading this whole effort. So you help me with this, and you know what, maybe Mask Up Monday is going to be a thing up until the end of you know, the summer. And we all start posting, you know, hashtag Mask Up Monday New Hampshire politics, and we start posting pictures and we start putting videos up. Hey, Brian and George, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, so they love when I do this.
Oh, so maybe we should stop.
I don't know. I think I'm on a roll. Just give me a couple more minutes. I just had coffee right now, and I'm like, you know, Brittany's looking at me like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? I think the hashtag, if we're gonna do Mask Up Monday, I think it's gonna be Mask Up Monday will be the hashtag. But we'll come up with something. Don't you worry. I'll be up early tomorrow. I'll start thinking about this. But I am going to talk to my friend Mike in Iowa, that's president out there, that came up with these, and see what they're doing, because I think it is great. So that being said, we will go through all the chats again. We'll get them out to all the UNISERV directors so everybody can section out to whoever they need to be. Once again, 17,000 strong people. We can do this. This is our time. This is our movement.